Welcome everyone to the first of four educational webinars on the four most promising and investment-ready industries of Ukraine. My name is Markevych, and I'm the president of Crossways and K Consulting, an investment consulting company that attracts Canadian investments into Ukraine. To the right of me, we have today Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, Viktor Dovgan, and to the left we have Bohdan Leshchyshen, Director of CUTIS office. So the plan for today, infrastructure, and we'll focus on, we'll try to provide you an in-depth view of the large large-scale opportunities and the high priorities placed on attracting foreign investments through joint ventures or concessions. So the plan is we'll briefly do a quick presentation where afterwards Mr. Leshchyshen will provide a brief overview of CUTIS initiatives. And then Deputy Minister Bohdan will briefly outline key strategic initiatives of the government, as well as we'll be able to answer some questions.
This is one of the four sectoral presentations covering the most attractive sectors of Ukraine's economy in terms of its investment potential. In the next several minutes, I will briefly present to you Ukraine's infrastructure and logistics sector. After that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Transport is an important sector of Ukraine's economy that supports domestic and international trade, transit, movement of goods and passengers. In 2017, transport, storage, postal and courier services reached $7.2 billion or 6.4% of GDP. This sector employs around 1 million people, approximately 6% of the employable population. The improvement of transport services can stimulate Ukrainian exports and facilitate domestic trade. Experts estimate the potential economic benefit of investments in Ukraine's transport sector to reach approximately $8 to $10 billion per year. The sector has 6 transport modes: road, rail, maritime, inland waterways, air transport and pipeline transport. The transport network of Ukraine includes 22,000 kilometers of railway routes, 170,000 kilometers of automobile roads, 2.2 thousand domestic navigable waterways, 13 seaports, 4 fishing ports, and 11 river terminals, 21 airports, 2 state-owned, 14 owned by municipalities, 5 other types of ownership. Railways account for 56% of Ukraine's goods turnover. Pipelines claim a share of 31%, other transport 13%. The highest demand for transport services has been recorded in the manufacturing, mining and agricultural sectors. In passenger turnover, as measured in passenger kilometers, railways have a lower share than motorways, 28% versus 36%. Air transport covers 1/5 of distance-weighted traffic, but it should be noted that only 0.2% of passengers, or 10.6 million, traveled by air in 2017. A key priority pursued by the Ministry of Infrastructure is the development of a national transport strategy until 2030 and integration of Ukraine's transport network into the pan-European TEN-T. The new transport strategy will supersede other strategies such as Ukraine 2020 and the transport strategy of Ukraine through 2020. The top 5 priorities of the transport strategy are as follows: efficiency of public governance in the transport sector, providing quality and efficient transport services, achieving sustainable financing for transport, improving transport safety and security, and finally, improving urban mobility and regional integration. Ukraine also needs a fundamental, systematic, and structural redesign of its transport infrastructure management system. The implementation of the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement could act as a key driver of the necessary transformations. The reform process should include deregulation and market liberalization, open and transparent competition, simplification of decision-making and control processes, transparency and public accountability of decision-making processes, and adoption of corruption prevention programs in the transport sector. Specific anti-corruption activities should include continuation of the corporatization of state-owned companies such as Ukrzaliznytsia Ukrainian Railways and Ukrposhta Postal Services, and restructuring of the state motorway agency Ukravtodor. Implementation of efficient procurement procedures, public accountability at all levels, continuous control procedures, and maintaining service quality levels. Transparent approach, e-government and e-services implementation. The institutional framework of the national transport sector of Ukraine is extremely wide and comprehensive. Infrastructure development and European integration are the main and consistent priorities of the Ministry of Infrastructure of Ukraine, which complement each other. Further development and deepening of the EU-Ukraine relations are based on the principles of political association and economic integration. It will contribute to the implementation of the best European standards in the field of infrastructure and yield positive changes at the macro and micro levels. In 2016 and 2017, Ukraine began to develop a comprehensive action plan for Trasika, the Transport Corridor Europe-Caucasus-Asia, an international program involving the EU and 14 countries from the East European, Caucasian and Central Asian region. Ukraine is the first country among those that have implemented the TASIS program under a new EU twinning project. The new EU twinning project is an institutional development tool and a new form of direct technical cooperation between the authorities of EU member states and beneficiary countries. The State Aviation Service and the European Aviation Safety Agency have signed an agreement on cooperation in the field of civil aviation security. Furthermore, an agreement with the European Commission on the convergence of certification systems and an action plan for the introduction of a common aviation space between Ukraine and EU member states have been reached. The core priorities include the signing of the Open Skies Agreement and bilateral liberalization of air services with EU member states. In the railway sector, a draft resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine has been developed on the establishment of a state railway service of Ukraine. On top of that, the Ukrainian Railways Company has been incorporated as a public company. The government of Ukraine has also introduced a roadmap for harmonization of Ukrainian legislation with EU legislation in the field of international maritime transport. Under the government resolution on the establishment of the State Service for Maritime and Inland Water Transports of Ukraine, preparations are currently underway for an audit to be performed by the International Maritime Organization. Consequently, the Ministry is creating a legal framework that will enable the implementation of up to 70% of EU norms in the relevant fields as soon as possible. Donor assistance from international financial institutions such as the World Bank, EIB and EBRD has played an important role in the development of the road sector in Ukraine. Specifically, the World Bank provides technical assistance in drafting new laws as well as formulates specific recommendations for each of the transport sectors, including motorways. The EBRD has provided public loan assistance in the development of the pan-European corridors which connect Kiev and the EU border and the rehabilitation of roads in Kiev region. Moreover, the EBRD is conducting a project to support the government in creating new concession law and policy. The EIB has been very active mainly in road rehabilitation while also providing nationwide technical assistance to improve road safety conditions. Urban transportation development and motorway rehabilitation will be the most important project with IFI participation in the next few years. In other fields, IFIs will be investing in air and waterway navigation projects. Public spending in the transportation sector is expected to reach $3.2 billion, mainly for existing road reconstruction and railroad infrastructure. M&A activity in the sector has been limited and primarily involves the sale and purchase of warehouse infrastructure facilities. Public-private partnership, or PPP, is a mode of cooperation between the state and business companies which is used in the infrastructure sector and has considerable potential for further expansion. Under the law, a PPP is regarded a mode of cooperation between the Ukrainian state, local communities as represented by state and local authorities or state partners, and legal entities or private entrepreneurs, private partners. PPPs operate on the basis of a contract, according to the procedure stipulated by the law. The winning of a special contest is a precondition for entering into a PPP with a public partner. Under the law, PPPs can be used in such spheres as the construction of various infrastructure assets, transportation and supply, as well as in many other sectors. The list of contractual PPP forms includes contracts of concession, joint activity or JA, production sharing agreements. However, the latter form is mainly used in the mining sector. The legislative framework for JA is stipulated by the Civil Code of Ukraine. Under a JA agreement, the partners undertake to act jointly without the establishment of a legal entity in order to achieve a certain goal. The joint activity can be carried out based on the consolidation of partners' capital, simple partnership, or without such consolidation. The profit from a JA is distributed between the partners proportionally to their contributions. For the purposes of taxation, a JA is regarded as a separate taxpayer and has to be registered with the tax authorities. No special tax regime is applicable to JA, which is taxable under the general rules. Concessions in Ukraine are governed by the Commercial Code of Ukraine and by the law of Ukraine on concessions. The formation of a concession precludes the transfer to a private partner of title to a concession asset being created, constructed and/or operated. It remains in state or municipal ownership. To obtain such assets, the concessionaire, under the contract of concession, makes concession payments. Transactions involving concession payments under contracts of concession of entire operations, where the state or municipal authorities are lessors, are not subject to VAT. Achievement of efficiency and transparency of PPP mechanisms is one of the priority goals for Ukrainian authorities. Borispil Airport is the largest airport in Ukraine with a 64% share in passenger turnover with 10.6 million passengers in 2017. It has 2 runways and 4 passenger terminals with a total capacity of 5,000 passengers per hour and 1 cargo terminal with 9 warehouses and a total area of about 15,000 square meters. A PPP investment project with an estimated value of $280 million envisages the construction of new facilities, modern road access, a TIR terminal, special temperature storage facilities, client infrastructure, and a new automated control system. Another example of a public-private partnership is Olvia Seaport in Mykolaiv region. The port is situated in the northern part of the Dnipro-Bug estuary, close to the Black Sea and the Dnipro River. The EBRD and IFC are providing technical assistance for the preparation of a feasibility study for the project with an estimated value of $250 million. This sum includes construction of a new grain terminal and 3 new berths, as well as upgrading railway access or the construction of a separate rail line to the site. One of the key challenges in the transportation sector is the low quality of motorways. Besides that, a number of challenges also exist in logistics, including non-competitive long-distance transportation, low quality of logistics service, inefficient customs clearance, and border control and poor transport infrastructure. The World Bank, in its study released a few years ago, expressed concerns as to the underdeveloped and unpredictable logistical chains, non-transparent tariff systems, ineffective railway services, and low share of river transport. In a nutshell, the Ukrainian transport sector has the following advantages: a political commitment to implement change, the association agreement and the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with the EU, administrative and institutional reforms, and the legislation approximation process moving forward in line with the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement. A key strategic position in the region favorable for the national transport networks with the TENT. A strong industry base and increased volume of international trade being forecasted, policy support for digitalization and IT solutions as well as for green transport, the density of railways and substantial length of navigable inland waterways, availability of high-speed train solutions for intercity transport, low environmental impact and low accident rate on railways and inland waterway transport, railway company corporatization in progress, a high rate of passengers carried by urban transport in cities, digitalization of urban transport, a growing international passenger traffic in air transport. Ukraine requires significant investments in infrastructure and is interested in finding investors capable of financing projects both at the national and local levels.
Right now, I'll pass the microphone to Mr. Leshchyshen, and he'll provide us with a brief overview of CUTIS initiatives.
The Canadian government has funded the Canada-Ukraine Trade and Investment Support Project, CUTIS, with a $14 million five-year project grant, which started in 2016. The project is assisting Ukrainian companies in developing bilateral trade opportunities in some chosen sectors through trade shows and B2B meetings with Canadian buyers and distributors. In addition, CUTIS is working with the Ukrainian companies looking for strategic investment partners in Canada. To date, CUTIS has introduced Ukrainian confectionery and furniture companies through a trade show format to Canadian distributors and buyers in Montreal and Toronto. In August 2018, Ukrainian shoe and textile apparel manufacturers will be coming to Toronto to showcase their products at trade shows, while IT companies will be coming to Canada in 2019. On the investment side, CUTIS is focusing on the following sectors: agriculture, infrastructure and logistics, energy generation and supply, and IT and telecom. I believe that the recent signing of the free trade agreement between Canada and Ukraine should help in making Canadian companies more comfortable to invest in Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Leshchyshen. And now I'll pass the microphone, and Deputy Minister Bohdan will briefly outline the strategic initiatives. Please.
Good day, colleagues. It's a great honor to present infrastructure opportunities for Canadian business. Recently, we adopted the strategy, the governmental strategy on national transport development of the national transport system till 2030. And according to the calculations, we need to invest about 50 billion euros for the capital repair of the roads, ports and airports and railway. Basically, as we see it from the budget financing, we can allocate around 2 billion euros annually for such purposes. So it means that the 50% of the investment shall be done by the private companies. That is why we are putting forward for adoption of the concession law. We have the pilot concession projects in the ports. We start from the small ports, Olvia, Kherson, and part of the ferry complex in port of Chernomorsk near Odessa. I would like to start as well pilot projects for the road concession. The very first projects are with Markevych, close to the Polish border, and first stage of the Kiev Ring Road. We have interesting projects in the airports of Ukraine, such as cargo terminal in the airport, in the main airport, international airport, Kyiv-Boryspil. Again, we are open for the investors, and we open the market for the. We worked a lot to renew the direct connection between Canada and Ukraine, and would like to have as well as the Air Canada on this route. The Ukrainian Railway is investing a lot, and the recent contract with the General Electric shows that the international companies has a lot of chances to modernize and for capex production of the diesel locomotives. We have the MOU signed by with Bombardier, so again there is opportunities for the Canadian companies in this respect. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Minister. Right now, I'll turn to Q&A session if we have any. So please post any questions on the chat that you see on the right-hand side of the webinar. And right now I see one that I'll read out, and the question to the Deputy Minister. Has the Ukrainian government to date provided any funding for the infrastructure projects?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, this year the State Road Fund was adopted last year and started to be operative. So we allocate this year 2 billion euros for the road construction, for the capital repair. Again, with regard to the other opportunities, we expect the private investors will come and do their job for investing in infrastructure. Again, I would like to mention that we attract the foreign financing. We attracted last year 1.2 billion euros from the EBRD and the European Investment Bank for the construction of the metro line to additional station and depot in city of Kharkiv, eastern Ukraine. For the 400 million euros for the capital repair and purchase of the trams, trolleybuses, and buses in 11 cities of Ukraine. Today, during the European Union summit in Brussels, we have again signed the loan agreement with the European Investment Bank for the road safety issues. It's a small amount, but still it's 75 million euros, but it shows the potential, the good sign for the investor. So basically we work on a different directions. Money from the budget and the loans from the international banks.
Thank you very much. Seeing a couple other questions coming in, or people typing the questions. So just a quick second until they come in. I just see people typing there. Some comments with regards to the okay, so give it another second here.
I think it would be useful as well to provide the portfolio of our infrastructure projects, and we'll be happy to share it as well after this webinar.
Yeah, so here's another one. Thanks for your patience, guys. And people, I have noticed that there is no plan by the Ukrainian government to spend funds on the main gas pipeline of Ukraine. It's still open for foreign investors.
I have no idea. As the Minister of Infrastructure, we're responsible for the transport infrastructure, basically ports, airports, road, and railway.
So I'll add to that. I'll add to that question. Is that on Wednesday we'll be holding a webinar on the energy, and we'll make sure we take that question, and it's going to be we're going to lead out the Q&A session with that question. Thank you. All right, so it doesn't appear there are more questions. So I just want to say thank you guys for participating. The webinar is going to be recorded and sent out to everyone who's registered or has came up forward with the initiative of hearing more about Ukraine and about potential investment opportunities. Ukraine is changing. Ukraine is open. Thank you very much. Goodbye.